It doesn't happen when they walk away. It doesn't happen when they ghost you, when they shrug, when they look you in the eyes and say they need space. It doesn't happen when you beg them to talk, to connect, to just show something, anything, and they don't. No. The moment an avoidant realizes what they lost comes much later. After the silence, after the absence, after the distance they thought would protect them. And by then, you're already gone, and they are finally awake. But that awakening, it's not peaceful. It's not liberating. It's not triumphant. It's brutal. It's lonely. And it's too late. Transition into the realization begins. Avoidants don't notice the loss right away. They convince themselves detachment is strength, that not needing anyone makes them safe. They tell themselves connection is dangerous, that love is a trap, and that vulnerability is weakness. So when you gave your all, your time, your softness, your patience, they saw it not as a gift, but as pressure. They felt smothered, not because you were too much, but because they never learned how to receive. Your love triggered every unhealed wound they buried. It whispered to every part of them that had been rejected, abandoned, unseen, and instead of facing it, they ran. Not from you, but from the mirror you held up. The mirror that said, you are lovable. You are safe. You don't have to earn love by being distant. But that terrified them. So they pushed you away, emotionally, physically, energetically. They called it space. You felt it as abandonment. They called it boundaries. You experienced it as rejection. They said, I need to focus on myself. What they really meant was, I'm too scared to let you see me. And then, you finally stopped chasing. You finally stopped explaining your worth. You finally walked away. And to them, it looked like peace, at first. The illusion of relief. They think, finally, no pressure, no more emotional conversations, no more needing to show up for someone. They scroll in silence. They dive into work. They hang out with people they don't have to connect with deeply. They tell themselves they're doing great. But it's not peace. It's avoidance. It's numbness disguised as freedom. And numbness has a short shelf life. Because eventually, the silence stops being relaxing and starts becoming loud. The void creeps in. It begins slowly. A memory flashes, your laughter over coffee. A moment replays, how you touched their arm gently when they were spiraling. A dream haunts them, you walking away, not looking back. And for the first time, they feel something they don't know how to name. It's not regret, not yet. It's a glitch in their carefully curated detachment. A crack in the emotional walls they built decades ago. They try to ignore it. They try harder. Work more, drink more, date more. But nothing lands. Everything feels flat. Because once you've been loved by someone who saw you fully, being around surface-level people feels suffocating. Then one night, they scroll back to your messages just to check something. They see how much you tried, how much you cared, and they realize you weren't the problem. They were. They see the texts they left unread, the efforts they ignored, the invitations declined, the vulnerability they shut down, and something inside them breaks. Not loudly, not publicly, but in the middle of the night, when no one is watching, they whisper what they never told you. I miss you. I was scared. You were good to me, and I didn't know how to receive it. But by now, you've moved on. They try to replace you. They meet someone new, someone easier, someone who doesn't require depth. But after the third dinner and surface-level conversation, they find themselves comparing your mind, your patience, your energy. They hear your voice in their head when certain songs play. They accidentally drive by that one place you loved. They catch the scent of your perfume, and their chest tightens. They realize they didn't just lose a person. They lost a safe place, a home. And now they're homesick for someone who no longer opens the door. The silent suffering. Avoidants don't grieve out loud. They don't post long captions. They don't send closure texts. They don't confess in tears. They suffer quietly, with pride that won't let them reach out, with fear that stops them from apologizing, with the haunting knowledge that they pushed away the one person who actually stayed, because deep down they know It wasn't that you asked for too much. You were asking for exactly what they couldn't give. Presence, openness, consistency, reciprocity. And they couldn't meet you there, not because you weren't worth it, but because they didn't believe they were. And now, they're alone with the one thing they tried to avoid all along. Their own reflection, their own patterns, their own fear. And in that silence, they finally see it. They didn't lose you in a dramatic moment. They lost you, bit by refusing to show up. And now that you're truly gone, the realization hits with full force. But it's no longer about whether they miss you. It's about whether they're brave enough to change. You started glowing the moment you stopped explaining yourself. You stopped justifying your softness, stopped begging to be heard, stopped proving that your love wasn't a threat. And the wildest part, that's when they began to notice you, truly notice you, but not in the way you once hoped. They notice you in the absence, in the echoes, in the versions of you they took for granted. Because now, you've grown, not out of spite, but out of necessity. You had to rise, you had to heal, you had to break your own trauma loop, while they stayed in theirs. And for the first time in a long time, you're glowing. But they're grieving not just the loss of you, but the version of themselves they thought they were. Here's the thing about avoidance. They don't just fear connection, they fear exposure, emotional exposure, the rawness of being seen too clearly. And you saw them, not just the charm or the intellect or the curated calm. You saw their fear, their longing, their inner child clawing for closeness. And that terrified them. So they shut down, they numbed, they acted indifferent. But now that they're alone with their choices, the cracks in their emotional armor start to rupture. Sleepless nights, short tempers, overthinking, random triggers. They start asking themselves questions they never asked before. Why do I always push good people away? Why does love feel like pressure? Why can't I let anyone in? But healing doesn't happen just because pain visits. Not everyone who breaks grows, and some will sit with the realization and do nothing, because growth demands what they fear most: surrender. They try to come back. It starts subtle, a like on an old post, a message, hope you're doing well, a story reply that doesn't say much, but says everything. They want to come back, but they don't want to apologize. They want access, without responsibility, because deep down, they still wrestle with shame, and shame whispers, you don't deserve them. You'll mess it up again. They're better off. So they hover, watching you glow up from the sidelines, paralyzed by pride, held hostage by fear. They wonder if you'll respond, if you'll give them another chance, if the door is still cracked open. But here's what they don't understand. You're not the same person they left. You no longer crave what you had, because you've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated half-love. You don't react the same, and that's what stuns them. The way you're no longer available, not out of revenge, not because you're being cold, but because you finally chose yourself. They say, you've changed. And you say, no, I've returned to who I was before I started shrinking. They want the old you, the one who waited, who forgave too quickly, who tried to fix things they broke. But that version no longer exists. She learned, he healed. They let go. Now, you don't chase, you don't explain, you don't settle. The real moment, the one they never saw coming, isn't when you blocked them. It's not even when you ignored their message. It's when they realized you're truly at peace. Without them, you're not posting to be seen. You're not healing to prove anything. You're just living. And that is their final heartbreak, because it forces them to confront the truth. They didn't just lose someone who loved them. They lost someone who understood them, who gave them grace when they didn't deserve it, who offered safety in a world that taught them to flinch. And now that safe place is gone. Your greatest victory. Here's what you need to remember. You didn't lose. You loved. You tried. You gave. You weren't perfect, but you were present, and your presence was a gift they didn't know how to hold. But that's not your burden. Your only task now is to keep becoming. Because your glow-up isn't about looking good. It's about feeling whole. It's about knowing that you deserve a love that doesn't require self-abandonment. A love that feels safe, steady, and mutual. Let them spiral. Let them watch. Let them regret. You've got healing to do, joy to feel, people to meet who don't flinch when you get close. If this spoke to you, if you've loved someone who couldn't love you back, let this be your reminder. It wasn't your fault, and you don't need to shrink just to be chosen. You are not hard to love. You were just loving someone who hadn't learned how to receive it. So keep choosing you, keep rising, keep walking away from half-love, until you find the kind that meets you fully.